Seems to me it seems to all start with John Brennan. Am I right? He's the one that goes over there. He's you said he took several trips to the UK and then to Russia way back in the day.
Back in 2015,
Yeah,
so a whistleblower, and I never want a whistleblower to ever reach out to me again. But
I don't blame
the situations you get put in by whistleblowers, because then you become aware of felonies, and then no matter
you.
what
Yeah,
you do, you're committing a felony. If you don't say anything, you're committing a felony. If you walk in and if you try to, and everything's so, and it's a lot of stress. Anyway, they they he went to a lawyer who passed to me this following information, because there was no functioning government. Now, why anyone would reach me if there's no function? But the information was John Brennan had made two trips in late 2014 and early 2015. Or one was to the UK. The first was to the UK, and the second was to Moscow. And in both cases, and they were separated by about 3 months, and the one to Moscow was in March, April of 2015. And the other one to the UK was a few months earlier. And in both cases, now this whistleblower was from within the CIA. And I believe it was indicated had something to do with security service within the CIA, said that John Brennan on both of those visits had slipped away from his security and gotten into limousines. And in the UK, they had tracked the limousine, or they thought that he was in the back of that limousine with the head of the Russian KGB in the United Kingdom. Now, the KGB is now currently called the FSB, but it's the old KGB. Mm-hmm. And then when he had gone to Moscow a few months later in, say, March, April of 2015, he had done the same thing at the back of the embassy, this time at like 2:30 in the morning or something, gotten in the back of a limousine. And these CIA security from whom this message came said, we believe that the head of the Russian FSB was in the back of that limousine with him. So that's extraordinarily, for like another 2 or 3 hours, to have our head of the CIA riding around in a limousine in Moscow with the head of the Russian KGB. You have no idea what they're cooking up. They could be cooking anything up. And I think they did.
Yeah.
And so what do you think they cooked up? Didn't they just cook up a plan to destroy the Republican nominee, whoever it was going to be?
Well, if you read my book, yes, they definitely cooked up. Brennan definitely cooked up that plan, and by July 2015, that plan was active, and I was part of it, unwittingly. But my hypothesis is it actually probably started a few months earlier between Brennan and the Russian FSB in the back of that limousine, and the plan was, there's this redheaded intellectual, real intellectual, bright girl that I write about a lot in the book, Maria Butina. Boy, is she wicked smart. And that had been to America in for the first time in February of 2015. Maybe, I'll tell you the part that's the hypothesis and the part that's certain. The hypothesis is that in the back of that limousine, Brennan said to the Russians, hey, you send us that girl back. She's kind of, her politics are like Ron Paul's. You send us that girl back and we're going to have some fun with her in DC. She, in May, was told, go back to America. She had an American boyfriend, lived in DC, a big mocker in the Republican Party, Paul Erickson, and like in the RNC type. You know how in politics there's these people who swim around in the RNC and the DNC, that I think was on the board or something. And that she went back to live with him, but with the mission given to her by this senator that she's close to, who's the vice chairman of the Central Bank of Russia. This is what she was told to do. You develop relationships for us into the Hillary, Cruz, Rubio, and Trump campaigns, so that whoever wins, we got a backdoor into the administration past the deep state and the bureaucrats. That's what she was told. That's what the stated purpose to her was. If Brennan if my hypothesis is correct, that he actually triggered that in February, March. He did that knowing that when she came back, he could sort of have her maneuvered and pinballed around the political establishment, especially the Republican establishment, and just get schmutz all over them. And then anytime he wanted, and so there's some conjecture in there, but I can tell you by July of 2015, that's absolutely what they were doing. Because I met Maria, there's this famous moment where she stood up and asked Donald Trump a question in Las Vegas. I had met her 3 days earlier and reported her. And I learned a couple years later they took it very seriously in D.C. It was like a rocket over D.C. There were already feds swarming her in July of 2015 at the latest, which means everything that happened while she asked Donald Trump the question, I'm sure the little lady 3 seats back was a Fed or something. I mean, that's how, and so certainly the Russian investigation or whatever was going on by July of 2015, which is interesting because they say it all started in July of 2016. It's a flat lie. At the latest July of 2015, they were all over Maria Butina. They were following everything she was doing. They were keeping track of her through me from September forward. They were feigning to me a lack of interest, but there's no way. And I found out a couple years later, somebody made a little slip and let me know. No, the moment I reported her, she was swarmed. So the whole time she was in America, and what she was doing was innocuous sounding. It wasn't, she was meeting people, political figures, going out to dinners, taking pictures of it, posting it on Facebook. She wasn't stealing the nuclear codes, but because she was never really accused of being a spy, she was accused of, even if she's doing that and just mapping the human terrain of Washington, D.C., the fact that she was doing that while in communication with a Russian senator violates the Foreign Agent Registration Act. Yeah. So they make it sound like she was out there stealing secrets. That's all she was doing. But my theory is that whole thing, well, I know that from July 2015 forward, they were letting it all happen. And it was Brennan at the top. Another thing they told me by early 2016 is Brennan running everything you're doing here at the FBI. John Brennan, in 2008, Patrick, a law got passed that said the director of the CIA can sign a piece of paper and basically take the steering wheel from the FBI director on any issue he wants. And he has done that with regard to Russia and Maria Butina and all this stuff. So John Brennan, and that was said to me, so John Brennan was definitely over the Maria Butina matter, at least by July of 2015. But like I say, he may have started it all with a suggestion in the back of that car a few months earlier. In any case, it was all a John Brennan creation. I compare it to the Spice Girls. You know, the Spice Girls were producer driven.
Yeah.
Some producer comes up with the idea.
Producer driven.
Yeah, we talked about this last episode.
We talked about this last time. And then we talked about you leaving clues when they asked you to get back with her and you were the perfect gentleman and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, not the first time I dated. First time we dated.
Yeah, you were a guy. Right. But then you weren't a real guy the second time. You were a fake guy.
Right.
Which, you needed to act like a Prince Charming, which you did.
Playing the long game.
Well, because I knew that she would be asked for my plan to work by the second time, which was July of 2016, that they sent me to date her. And in all deference to the agents, very good men, and they were very apologetic. And they said, listen, we really do not do this. The United States never does this kind of stuff. But you're being asked to do it. No one will think less of you if you don't want to do it. But get back, re-engage with her romantically, get to the bottom of what's going on with her. And so, but between those two times I dated her, these other things that happened. One is I had figured out that they were using her to smudge up the Republican Party. So I called it a Cano scandal, that someday they were going to have a can on the shelf. They were going to take it off, shake it up, crack it open, and spray a Russian scandal all over the Republicans.
That's if a Republican was going to win. That was the insurance policy, right?
That was the insurance policy. And
okay. They also got you to get Hillary to accept an $18 million bribe.
Right.
And they did that so they could control Hillary,
They could
right?
compromise her.
So that they could blackmail her, right?
No,
So
government
they
work.
did both parties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They compromised both parties using you, and that's when you go, okay, wait a minute. They're
I'm
trying
gonna,
to
yeah. And they
they're
kept me alive.
they're trying to do a coup to take over our government. That's when
Right.
you realize you're involved in a coup of the American government.
Houses of paper, but folks don't hear a word you say. Friendships like